Good afternoon. Welcome to Maximizing BIA Resources Using Target Marketing. My name is Neill Roan. I'm going to be the moderator for the session today. On behalf of IDA, we want to thank Joji, Kumagai, and Tammy, Tsang for the session this afternoon and want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. You know, when you think about target marketing to fuel success, you can think about the objectives in a number of ways. You can think about it in building awareness. You can think about it as a way and a means to activate the business community. You can think about it as a way to engage and enroll and animate your community. You can think about it as a strategy to actually use marketing as a means to build community. But at the end of the day, I think when you hear Tammy and Joji talk about what they're up to in Strathcona, what you're going to find out is that they are really expert at knowing how to do well by doing good, which is pretty exciting. How many of you know Vancouver's Strathcona neighborhood? Are you familiar with it at all? Well, let me tell you just a little bit about it. It's the oldest residential area in all of Vancouver. It was originally a settlement of log cabins built around a sawmill called Hastings Mill. And it is also the site of Vancouver's very first school, which served that Vancouver area and North Van, which in those days was known as Moodyville. I love that. If you know Vancouver in the winter, you know why it should be called Moodyville. It's a culturally diverse area. About half the population is non-Caucasian, 40% Chinese. Chinese is the largest first language spoken there, and it has the largest Chinese population in Vancouver, including Chinatown. It's very popular with young families because it's still a really good housing value there. And it's also very popular with artists, and it is the site of the East Side Cultural Crawl. I think the thing that I love about Strathcona, it's been described as having a working class soul. And I think that that's a really special thing in a city like Vancouver, which is so beautiful and such a gorgeous setting, but is a little bit not getting over itself sometimes. It's great. The true and realness and the grittiness of Vancouver is just terrific. You're going to hear about a campaign called Made in Strathcona, a campaign which I think is really extraordinarily interesting for a couple of reasons. One is it really focuses on people who are adding value to products and services right there in the community, connected to an idea of making and selling things in the place. And the strategy itself is an affirmational one, which is actually pretty rare in the world of branding and communications, and I think one that is especially appropriate for Strathcona. The people you're going to be hearing from today are Joji Kumagai, who's the executive director of the BIA in Strathcona, a really interesting guy, very interesting background. I understand that he is a wicked floor hockey player from Tammy. He's also very funny. I think you're going to really enjoy hearing him speak to you. And you're also going to hear from the godmother of my loudspeaker, entrepreneur and marketing executive and strategist, Tammy Tsang, whose business is in Strathcona and who serves as chair of the BIA in Strathcona, and someone who has brought her firm to the table and done a lot of pro bono work to walk her talk, which is about using marketing as a tool and a fuel for meaningful engagement. So I think you're in for a great session this afternoon. Please join me in welcoming Tammy and Joji.
Technical difficulty, sorry.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not quite sure what time it is right now, but I'm doing all right. Thanks very much, Neill, for the wonderful introductions. And I want to thank all of you for attending our session today. We will try to make it as worthwhile as possible. Neill talked a lot about the background of Strathcona. So you heard about its industrial roots and its early origins in the context of the city of Vancouver. We do have, so a lot of BIAs are focused around retail areas, but our BIA has about 80% of its membership comprised of industrial properties. and businesses, and it's obviously due to its industrial roots. And so it's quite a challenge in the sense that we have to think about things a little bit differently than predominantly retail-focused activities. And it's given us a tremendous opportunity to look at other ways of doing BIA activities, and we'll present one today as a case study for Made in Strathcona. As Neill was alluding to, this campaign was really nestled within sort of greater community economic development initiatives that we're working on. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And so I think it's interesting. It's been very eye-opening for me working with Tammy and the rest of our board and committees and members about how you can really tie in marketing to this kind of work. I'm no marketer by any means, so it's been a very enlightening experience for me. And so I hope there's opportunities to shed some of our experience and on learning to you today. So I'll turn it over to Tammy right now, and she's going to talk about some of the successes of the campaign.
Hi, everyone. I'm a little short, so I'm going to put this down. So what I'm going to do is start talking about the successes of the campaign and what we did and all the details around that. And then we're going to actually jump back to the very beginning after this to show you the foundation of actually how we got there. As I'm kind of going through all the sessions in this conference, I've noticed that a lot of times we talk about what the outcomes are and how great it is, and it's very inspiring. But I really wanted this session to be very practical and pragmatic so that you have the tools to actually take back to your organizations and create an effective marketing plan and utilize the most important aspect, which is target marketing. So the first things first, our successes. So Made in Strathcona was kind of a baby of Joji, the SBIA, and ours. We put so much energy and passion behind it because we really believed that this was an important cause. Like Neill had mentioned earlier so eloquently, what we do, my marketing agency runs meaningful engagements. We really don't believe that marketing needs to be interruptive or noisy anymore. We really believe that it can give back and inspire people. And so that's the purpose of what we wanted Made in Strathcona to do, inspire individuals within the community to really showcase. So within basically 1 month period, we had 18 million impressions over 30 outlets. So that's print, TV, social media, radio, you name it, we had it. And it was a combination of earned media as well as actually paid media. What we did was we strategically spent our monies in places that we knew we would get as much attention as possible. Thank you, Joji. So it was anchored all in a campaign that is around tours, basically to tour, invite the public to come in to 2 different tours that focused on different industries that Strathcona actually highlights, which is manufacturing, creative, food, and hidden gems. So as you can tell, our area is very diverse. We had a large variety of different people we had to actually appeal to. So what we did was we had 4 tour lines that actually focused on each one of these so that we were attracting the right individuals. What it also did was provide a hook for media to actually write about it and talk about it. So the tours, at the end of the day, wasn't actually what we were measuring to be successful. What we were measuring was the amount of conversation and impressions we were getting from it. So at the end of the day, we weren't trying to get people to sit down and come to the offices. We were getting as many news stories on these tours as possible. What we also did was provide these pins, which, Joji, if you could hit. Right in the middle there. They're 7 feet high, 4 feet wide. Thank you, Joji. And what we did was we placed them on businesses that had high traffic areas. So most of you said you don't know where Strathcona is. It's kind of a thorough way when people are traveling into their workplaces, into the city. So oftentimes people just drive by. So what we did was we took advantage of that and put these gigantic pins along these thoroughways. So we invited businesses to participate in that way. We also invited businesses to participate as tour locations. And finally, as you can see here, PR. So you can see here one of our more popular chefs. What we did was we took the PR pieces to people who already were getting media so that we knew that the pickup would be fast. And then we highlighted some hidden gems, ones that people weren't really totally talking about, and inviting press to cover that as well. So as we picked up momentum, we were actually providing them some opportunity to tell stories that maybe weren't normally in the media. So here's basically a Twitter. We had people talking about the tours. This is a little glimpse into that as well. We had a hashtag, obviously. We were in print, as you can see here. We were showcasing stories of the different businesses. And then we had people talk about the giant location pins and sharing. As you can see, it was liked by 114 people, usually people that have never been to the neighborhood, really learning about the location. And again, more TV stories on breakfast television. We were covered by most of the major media outlets. And we had full articles on blogs, so people were talking about it quite a bit. And again, obviously, the pins. So I'll let Joji talk about how it started to begin.
Okay, so first, okay, so the first slide I have here, it has the problem written on it. And the photo here is of a board, and I don't want you to associate the problem with our board. That's not really connected. Although I did notice, Tammy snuck this photo, and I did notice that neither of us are on this photo, so that's a good thing. So we have a board of directors and a marketing committee, and one of the challenges was, I know many of you are executive directors or staff with BIAs or BIDs or BRZs, and one of the challenges I've always found is when you're working with small business owners, they have 100 different ideas every meeting, and many of those are actually different from the ones that they mentioned the previous meeting and are often contradictory to what they had said before. And so we really felt that it was important to have some kind of strategic marketing campaign. And again, because we're not a retail-focused BIA, it was a little bit more challenging because you know, I guess the traditional kind of shopping and incentives type of programs wouldn't work in our area. So what we first did is really kind of reviewed what the challenges were. So our committee wasn't as focused as it could have been. We were probably lacking some community-based marketing expertise. So we have marketers, but ones who are typically focused on their individual business and not necessarily understanding the context of the community. And again, the clarity of what the committee should be doing. I think these are all challenges. Wonderful directors, though, so don't make the assumption that they're not pulling their weight. So what we did, first of all, is at the board level, we talked about the need to have this focus. So the board, they deemed it one of the priorities a couple years ago to embark on a longer-term marketing plan. And what the committee eventually came up with is a 5-year marketing plan. And the committee, given these resources and this time that was supported at the board level, was able to really determine what it wanted to do. So it wasn't necessarily a matter of having to pump out different things every month that weren't necessarily aligned with some of the larger sort of umbrella priorities, but ones that really had a focus to it. And then by doing that, it allowed us to very carefully plan the execution and implementation of this program. So we first started this campaign in the early planning stages in the probably the fall or early winter of 2012. So it's been quite a long time in the making, but it's really given us that focused approach. Okay, so I'm going to, oops.
Thanks for grabbing me a sandwich. Oh, is that the new Herschel bag?
Yeah, I love it. Made in Strathcona.
This is good.
Yeah, it's the tuna melt from Butler Did It Cafe.
Made in Strathcona.
Right ahead to Christine's Lingerie. Brianne will love their rose.
Same brand Gwyneth Paltrow wears, right?
Uh-huh.
Made in Strathcona. Okay, who keeps whispering?
For the first time ever, Strathcona businesses are open for public tours. Visit
MadeInStrathcona.com for more.
So that was just a clip of our radio ad. So now we're going to go a little bit into basically the components of creating an effective plan. And then we'll dive into the target marketing aspect a little bit later. when writing a plan, and most of you probably already have written one, I just want to emphasize some of the key components that made our campaign successful, was that we spent, I don't know how many meetings, maybe like months and months of meetings, really working on a sub-vision. So not the actual vision of the organization, but a marketing vision that was specific to us. And the reason why we wanted to do that was to focus on something that was that resonated with the diverse amount of community members we had, but also resonated with our team as well. It was something that we could focus on in the long term, so that would be applicable 5 years down the line. And what it does also is it provides you the opportunity to create sub-goals for each year for you to actually revisit as a way to tackle that vision. So you're not compromising, the fact that you're not investing in one area and you're focusing on another area. The idea is that you're slowly breaking down your goal into tangible outcomes as steps. So the idea also, and in Neill's session yesterday, he mentioned this, when you have a strong vision and a strong brand, what will happen is you'll know what to reject and what to actually accept at the very end of the day. For example, Strathcona has been sponsoring a festival for quite some time, and it's in the area, it's very relevant, it attracts thousands and thousands of people, and it's a fantastic event. But at the end of the day, what we realized was it wasn't necessarily reinforcing the fundamental vision that we have, which is Strathcona is a place where independent businesses come to thrive. It was an art community, and so the artist community was really talking about the independents that were there instead of necessarily independent established businesses that we want. So we didn't not fund that organization. Obviously, we still will. The only difference is now we're rethinking the way we're actually having that funding work to apply to our vision. So maybe it's that we're highlighting independent artists. Maybe it's that we're actually having the conversation move towards building business in the area. So at the end of the day, it's finding different ways to partner with a variety of organizations that actually pertain to your end goal.
So after we had done a lot of work around the vision and mission statement, as Tammy mentioned, it really allows us to hone in on the types of skills that we're looking for. And so we have, through a lot of recruitment and engaging our members, we're able to find the types of people who, first of all, understood the community scale that we need to work at, and that we want to make sure we had the right representation of businesses. So we do have some retail, so we want to make sure we have representation there, but we also have a lot of industrial, things like gender balance, which I think is important too, was properly sort of accounted for. Not that we said yay or nay based on somebody's gender, but and then we also had clear representation of areas. So we have a pretty big area, so it goes 9 blocks from east to west and south to north. I think it's another 7 blocks or so. So we want to make sure that every different area of the BIA had a chance to participate. And the most important thing is just really having the expertise. We were very fortunate to have Tammy appear out of nowhere. She just showed up one day and said she wanted to get involved, and she had a marketing background, understood a lot about community, had done a lot of work with nonprofits, and has also, or is an executive director with her own nonprofit as well. So just really understanding both sides of the story. And that really helped us develop the cohesion and the leadership we needed to make this campaign successful.
So one of the other aspects was to really focus in on what was the strength of our area. And like Joji had mentioned earlier, it wasn't really retail. It wasn't necessarily attracting people. In fact, if you've been to Strathcona, you would have no idea that there's over 500 businesses in the area because everything's blocked up in these big buildings with no windows. And, the landscape in general doesn't look like there's a lot of businesses because most of them are offices. And so what we tried to do was start highlighting what were the successes of the area, what was specifically great about Strathcona? What were things that nobody knew about Strathcona that we wanted to share with the public and draw the dialogue? So we started, as you can see here, this is one of the maps that we designed for it. We focused on the variety of different businesses, as you see the icons on the left there, and then we showcased each of the businesses that were there, but on the pins that we distributed as well, we talked about how long businesses have been there for, how some of the largest businesses that started out in Vancouver actually started from Vancouver in the Strathcona area. We also lend itself to showcase the vision. So again, going back to the vision, we kind of use the creative brief or the marketing plan as a litmus test is whether or not we should actually be doing this. So again, always focusing on the strengths of what we think our target demographic would want. And it's also easy and fun. We wanted something that people wanted to participate in. Whenever you're looking at meaningful engagements, it has to be voluntary participation. It isn't, interrupting them on your phone. It isn't, having some loud, obnoxious noise. The idea is really having voluntary engagement with what it is that you do. So in order to do that, most of the time you want it to be easy and fun. So what this all lends to, too, is as you're more specific about your vision and you're more specific about your mission, what will also be very clear is that you will devise goals that will achieve your vision. And from those goals, you start being able to be measurable about it. Like I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the overview, we found out that the most important thing to attract independent business owners was that the perception of the area was quite negative. And so our goal in the very first year, and not necessarily the second or third year, was to work on perception shifting. And so as we were looking at perception shifting, we were thinking, okay, well, how does that work? It's usually word of mouth, it's usually the community. We decided that the measurement that we'd use, or the KPI we'd use, was really impressions. And of course, given the limited resources of our BIA, we decided that we were going to measure what we could, given the resources and time that we had, and use those as success factors. So we didn't choose measurements such as people attending the tours. We chose how many outlets were actually talking about us, how many impressions those outlets got, how many people were visiting the website, all points where we were measuring it as a perception shifting tool. So it helps you focus the campaign. So we had some questions around, oh, you know what, we're not getting as many tour sellouts as we were hoping for. But at the end of the day, we were thinking, oh, should we invest some money or time into actually getting people to the tours? No, at the end of the day, what we did was we let that go because that wasn't the important aspect. The important aspect was we were getting as much media as possible. So with the limited time our staff had, we were going out there and trying to get as much attention as possible. So really being focused in on it. And we basically decided everything based on that. Was it gaining attention for our area? Was it going to perception shift? And at the end of the day, you need to constantly ask yourself that. And like most people say in marketing, it's really about the execution and the quality of your execution. So this is a great way to make sure that what you're doing actually is impacting your end goal at the end of the day. And I don't know if some of you know about critical success factors, but they're basically what tells you a campaign will be successful or not successful. And you really want to establish those things really early on so that you know what are the things that if they fail, you're not going to succeed. For example, one of the critical success factors were poor stories. If reporters weren't really interested in the stories that we wanted to give or share with the community, then we weren't going to get published. If the bloggers or the communities didn't have passionate stories or ones that attracted the right type of attention, then we weren't going to be successful. So we're kind of looking at the plan B aspect of things, but also listing out all the things that would make this campaign a failure, and then making sure that those are the things that we concentrated on.
Thank you. So in terms of time invested, as I mentioned earlier, planning started in late 2012. We had a number of meetings initially to really craft that mission and vision statement, and I can't express how important that process was. It was a lot of work and a lot of meetings, and the dedication of our staff and directors on the marketing committee was pretty impressive. But that really created that that compass point in which all the other activities and ideas that we're generating at subsequent meetings could have we could decide whether or not it would fit or not. And as I mentioned before, I think one of the challenges is small business owners always have new ideas, and it's far easier to say, yes, this is something we should look at, or no, this isn't something we're going to pursue, if you have a very clear idea of what you want to do. And it just, as an agreed upon mission and vision statement, you also don't step on anyone's toes, because I think sometimes people, if they consistently feel their ideas are being shot down, they may question why they should continue participating. But just that clarity was really important. So we had about 300 people hours invested in this process. That's starting from the initial early stage meetings to the end where we started implementing the campaign. And that doesn't really include things like having to review documents and those kinds of things, or working on budgets, but really the more direct hours invested in meetings and that sort of thing. Excuse me. And then in terms of the staff time, we did spend probably the 2.5 months leading up to that campaign, which launched on May 6th of this year, really focusing on all the little details. So there's a lot of parts to this campaign, and so there's obviously a lot of parts and little things that we had to keep track of, such as the tour logistics. Getting businesses on board the first year was a challenge, because many of them, for example, they really didn't know what exactly we were trying to achieve, probably because we weren't 100% sure what we were trying to achieve in terms of how the tours would unfold, not knowing every nuance and intricacy of their business. And then also things like we wanted to make sure that the tours happen on the weekend, because that would be the chance to engage the most members of the public who we wanted to have that perception shift happening. If we had it during a weekday, the challenge is we'd probably get a lot of people in the community who already knew a lot about the business or the business community, and so we need to do it on a weekend, which meant that the business had to open their doors for a few hours on the weekend. We had things like a reception that happened after, and that was a really good opportunity to get the participants on the tour all together, and they can start talking to each other about some of the other businesses that they saw that maybe someone else on the tours hadn't seen. And so just a chance to really create more cross sort of pollination that way. Some other things we had to do is we had to work on getting more members involved for things like we created amenities maps, so making sure that they were on the map and making sure that we had all the little details connected to that in place. Even things like finding where all the mailboxes were. So the amenities map was to show all the different things in the neighborhood that businesses could access. And I know mailboxes seems pretty trivial, but when you're looking for a mailbox and you're not sure where it is, it can be a bit of a chore. And then also things like making sure that we had the right businesses to get the pins, getting some memorandums of understanding in place so that businesses would actually commit to being on the tour and to taking care of the pins the way they said they wanted to. And as a case and example, we actually had one business drop out literally the day before the campaign was to launch. So just making sure that we minimize that as much as possible. So we had all the terms of reference, I guess, in terms of their participation in the campaign written down, and they signed off on it. Nothing too legal, but just to make sure that there was a firm understanding of what they could expect from us and what we could get from them.
So one of the key components that we did as well was really look at target marketing. So I don't know if you guys know much about target marketing, but it's not something that a lot of the large organizations did in the beginning, like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, McDonald's. Target marketing wasn't something that they did. Actually, mass marketing was the majority of the efforts initially. But as the audience has become more sophisticated, as mediums have become so wide, so many choices, it's not just TV, radio anymore. It's a million different social media apps. It's a million different avenues that marketers have actually created for you to communicate to your audiences. It's better to start focusing your efforts into one area. Now, the benefits of target marketing are very vast, but before I get into it, I want to tell you about exactly how we look at target marketing. So the very first thing we do, or at least I do, is look at bullseye target marketing. I've worked with a wide variety of organizations before, and a lot of them don't actually have a target market. Oftentimes they're like, oh yes, I do. My target demographic is mothers. Well, there's a large different amount of mothers. There's older mothers, there's younger mothers, there's different demographic, and it's all different shapes and sizes. So the idea is really to focus in and hone in on a great target demographic. I've only seen one organization that's ever handed me a solid documentation that actually told me from top to bottom who their target demographic is, and that is a marketer's dream. That is perfect because it helps answer so many questions. Now, in order to write your target demographic, and you can do this tomorrow, all you have to do is really start envisioning and creating a character. Be creative and look at the people that are around you. Choose the ones that people want to be, who you want to identify with. Choose the people that actually people want to become in the long run. So for example, as a target demographic, you might want to choose a girl named Lily. And she's 40 years old. She has 2 children. They're probably aged 3 and 4. You really want to go into depth about that individual. You want to start looking at their hair color. You want to start looking at what they read, what they write, what they think about when they wake up, what they go to bed worried about at the very end of the day. Because the more you actually know about this person, the more likely you are to be able to effectively communicate with them. And I'll start going into why exactly there's some problems if you don't actually look at these details. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at a target demographic, you want to almost embody, you want to know almost the next step that the person is going to take. And a lot of people who aren't really into target marketing tell me, well, I don't want to exclude a million other types of people. Well, what you're actually doing is focusing your conversation and your key messages so specifically that you're attracting more people. So for example, if anybody knows me, I own an iPhone, an iPad, and a laptop, iMac basically, and actually a laptop, a MacBook basically. And if you ask the target demographic of what Apple is, I can very easily argue they're talking about tech innovators who are really, really interested in developing new software. They want to be innovators in their industry. They're probably male, and they're probably ambitious. I can start describing what their target demographic is. But why is it that I own a ton of their stuff? Well, it's because a part of my internal identity actually relates to being an innovative, ambitious individual. I actually relate to it. Why do I read Vogue magazine? I'm not a model. I'm not from the fashion industry. I love, love, love their clothing, but I could never afford it. Why do I buy it? Well, it's because a part of me actually wants to be that beautiful woman. A part of me actually relates to that. So that's the beauty of target marketing. You're actually finding a relatable point. I don't always relate to everything my mother does, but there's a lot of things that we have commonly valued that are fundamentally in the core of that. So the more specific you are, the actuality is that your target will help define your key messages, the mediums, and how you say it. So for example, for a key message, if I really know a person, what will happen is I'll kind of know what I have to say to convince them on a one-on-one level. And this is very common. Most people use taglines. Most people use communication mediums. They talk about how, mothers really want to shop. They want to look for quality. They want to look for things that are healthy for their children, all of those things. So that's a key message. I think everybody's got that down. Well, the mediums is where, some people start looking, okay, maybe I want to do radio. Well, which radio stations do you want to look at? Which TV stations do you want to look at? What are the things that, I'm maybe too embarrassed as my demographic to admit I watch? I watch Say Yes to the Dress all the time, but I also watch Veronica Mars. Like, would you ever guess that about me? The idea is you really start to learn the inside outs of the person. I must be reading Entrepreneur magazine, but I'm probably also reading Vogue. So as you get to know the people, you start knowing where to invest your time and money more so than ever. Now, the hardest part is how you say it. Now, mediums, you have to respect the platforms that you're on, right? With how you say it, you're basically writing it in a way that's actually as if they were saying it themselves. With mediums, for example, respecting the platform is very similar. If I'm on Instagram, you'll know that hashtag is king. And you'll know that Instagood and some of these hashtags are the ones that everyone uses. But you wouldn't really know that if you're not an Instagram user. And in fact, you can offend someone if you go on Instagram, use that medium, try to promote your product without actually getting to know the people on there, without actually getting to know the community on there. So the same thing goes for how you say it. Demographically, for example, I'm Asian. Right? And there's a ton of commercials out there that are trying to target my demographic. They have beautiful Asian women on the poster, and they're talking about, you know, flying to Hong Kong or Asia or whatnot, and then they're talking about math, say, right? But that's actually kind of offensive to me because you didn't take the time to actually get to know me before you marketed to me. Whereas another commercial I was watching recently called, it's from, I believe, Honda. They were trying to market to my demographic. And what they did was actually talk about this fundamental tradition that most Asian people like myself do. They bargain in Chinese, and they have a face as if they don't really care about the product, and then they basically go in for the dive at the end of the day. And so even though that could be borderline offensive, it's actually not. It's actually hilarious. It really resonated with me. I want to go buy a Honda now. So the idea is you want to make sure that you test out your product. You really get to know the person you're talking to. If you don't know the person you're talking to, it's very easy to offend them. And the easiest way to do it is ask. So what does doing that do? What does zoning in on a target really help you do? Well, meaningful engagements. You can actually be talking to someone you care about talking to. You can actually be talking to someone you know. Isn't it horrible when you're in a conversation and you know the other person doesn't care about anything you have to say, and all they care about is what they're saying? Well, it's the same thing in marketing. If your marketing isn't genuine and they know, and we're very sophisticated market readers now. Everyone's a marketer nowadays, right? Because they're on social media or something. But the idea is that if we can smell disingenuity from a mile away. And the idea is to be as genuine as possible, to really get to know the people you're trying to talk to. If you don't care, they know you don't care. It also maximizes your resources. Nowadays, what we have are these mediums, these social platforms. Even word of mouth is a type of marketing that will never disappear. You have to meet with the people one-on-one and have that conversation. Still, the most powerful way is word of mouth. Still, the most powerful way of marketing to someone is having someone give you a recommendation. So at the end of the day, what this does by really zoning in on your target is that when you truly like someone and you truly like a brand, truly like a community, you're going to talk about them. You're going to promote them. You're going to share it with your friends. And the idea is to get on their good side. And then it's also a different involvement opportunity, the more specific you are. For example, with our campaign, what we did was we zoned in on independent business owners. But what we also got was a variety of different ways to include different organizations because we were so specific. One example is what we want to do is start engaging real estate agents to start bringing businesses to the area. As I mentioned, Strathcona has, hundreds of different types of businesses in our category. We can't go to a real estate agent and say, well, we take anything under this list of 100 types of businesses. That doesn't work. You have to tell them, we're looking for 3 types of businesses. We're looking for creatives, we're looking for light manufacturing, and we're looking for retail. If you know anybody under those 3 categories, send them our way. So the more concise and precise you are, the better it is. And they'll start thinking of different, unique ways. Oh, I know this business who's looking for a live work. Do you do that? And you didn't say it as the 3, but they'll start thinking about you because you're more specific. And metrics. Again, not everybody has the budget to do metrics, and I highly, highly recommend hiring a market research agency if you can. But if you can't, luckily, a lot of the social mediums provide you with free analytics. Twitter just came out with theirs, and it's accessible if you guys don't know that already. But Facebook, Google Analytics, SurveyMonkey, all of those free mediums will provide you with different ways to measure it. And it might not be the most statistically accurate, but at least you have something to show. And every time we do a campaign, we all hash it up into a report. We put down all the qualitative and quantitative information. We do deductions, and we try to have that conversation as much as possible given the limited resources you have. But at the end of the day, it's important to have the metrics because, one, it inspires the people that you have involved in the campaign. They can actually see something tangible other than people were talking about it. It lives on beyond today. You don't think about it as a recent memory. It's actually tangible and something that you can showcase. And I'm going to pass it to Joji for the last one, which is funding.
Yeah, get all the fun slides. So actually I had a question for you, Tammy. So I have a BlackBerry I use pretty much to wear the same pair of shoes every day, and I ride a bike. Any marketers interested in me?
Oh, tons.
No, probably not. Okay, so in terms of, so that's very enlightening. In terms of funding, the BIA, we put in about $100,000 over 2 fiscal years for this campaign. And it doesn't really encompass all the in-kind contributions we received as well. So for example, we did engage Tammy's firm to help us out with this work. And her company put in a significant amount of in-kind contributions. We also had some other interesting opportunities that came up. For example, when we're doing the radio ads, the radio company was interested in doing promotions for our businesses. And so they would talk about the campaign, and then they would give out gift cards just to promote some of the businesses as part of this campaign and just to get more engagement opportunities with their audience and the businesses. So we went around and asked businesses for $50 gift cards, and all of them were very happy to do so because even doing a very, very short radio segment would cost thousands of dollars, and for them to get specific mention of their name as part of this larger campaign for $50 is a great deal. There's also opportunities for additional sponsorships and grants as we start tying this into broader community economic development focus with the City of Vancouver, because they're very keen on seeing how to support the existing businesses and residents. Strathcona is an area that's, I think this is common for almost every city in North America right now, but just seeing a lot of gentrification happening. And so how do we make sure that the businesses and the residents that are currently in the area can benefit from some of this incoming investment and opportunity and not at the expense of them? Okay. And then also we had a lot of businesses participate as well. So we had businesses, for example, at a reception giving a lot of in-kind contributions for the food and other things that we had at the reception and giving us a space for minimal cost, and just really seeing a lot more energy within the community to participate and take part in this tour. And everyone, you sort of really see the snowball effect. And for, again, a pretty reasonable investment of $100,000 over 2 years was a great return for us. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap it up here, and then we'll take some questions. There's also some documents that are being passed around. So I just wanted to reiterate, the strengths of the program really was about multiple opportunities for participation. We had the amenities map. I have some copies of those. We had the tours. We had the pins. We had a lot of media work. And so there's just a lot of ways for businesses, whether they're very immersed in the program or whether they were just able to participate on a more superficial level, but there's still an opportunity for participation and just this community buzz that was happening. We also had the many facets of the campaign, and what that really helped us do is reduce the risk of any one particular part of that campaign not going as well as we hoped to. So Tammy mentioned earlier we had the tours, and if we put all our energy into having these tours and say there's only like a 25% participation, that would be that would be very damaging and crippling to our campaign. But because we had so many pieces to it, it made it a lot easier to ensure that we achieved our targets without necessarily putting all our eggs into one basket. I think the very clear, straightforward message was extremely helpful. It helped to get our businesses that were involved, once they understood what we're trying to do, involved. And then also it's very easy, I think, for the media to understand what the message we're trying to convey. And we also had a lot of contact from businesses outside our area that they want to get involved too, because I think it was a very straightforward message that they could resonate with. I think there's the studies that show if you have, we were talking about this yesterday actually, the studies that show if you have too many options, people just get confused. So by giving them just one option, it was, or one message, it was much easier for them to engage in. And I think there was some fantastic opportunities to leverage resources. We had the radio promotion campaign that I mentioned, a lot of the media work. We put in $100,000, but obviously for various projects. But in terms of just the media, the media coverage that we were able to receive, we earmarked it around $170,000 return. So we actually got more than the original cash investment. And then there's also a lot of businesses that provide in-kind contributions as well. So I think it was, we more than achieved our metrics and objectives. And then the other thing is, this kind of tying it all together is, I think it was very great to use a strategic approach for marketing, and because I think so many BIAs do have marketing committees or marketing work that's happening. But I think what was really helpful is that it was so focused on sort of the broader community economic development initiatives that we're working on. So again, things like making sure that the community has opportunity to participate, but the key one for me is really focusing on what the strengths of the community are. So much of the news coverage for Strathcona is about, we heard, I think the top 2 or 3 objectives are like notorious or like sketchy or those kinds of adjectives, and some of them are kind of cool now though, so that's kind of interesting. But a lot of those adjectives are used for our community and news media, but it's something that we're able to really focus on the positives. So we have, for example, manufacturing businesses that have been in the area for over 100 years, and we also have a very emerging high-tech digital media design district that's happening as well. But again, so many of them are behind buildings that are 50 years old, warehouses and that sort of thing, so people really don't know what's happening. We have over 8,000 employees. It's a very vibrant area, but just not in the traditional sense. And I think that building on the assets is so much easier to do. It tells a more meaningful and a more engaging story, and then versus focusing on the deficiencies. And I think trying to bridge those deficiencies in the community it's so much work. It's very challenging. You need to do it at some point, but not necessarily at the expense of all the assets in the community. So that's really what the point of the campaign is. As I said, this is part of a 5-year campaign, and we're going to be working on the more tangible community economic development and building businesses in the future years.